Hello, fellow movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode. My name's Sean Waskrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. And today we're reviewing the latest film to come out in theaters Saturday night. This is a film based on the opening night of Saturday Night Live, as I think it's just entered its 50th season of telecast. And this is all about basically the 90 minutes before the very, very first episode. This is a film that, once again, much like most movies that come out at this point to the end of the year, we didn't know this movie existed when we did our most anticipated earlier in the year. Had we did, probably would have been on our list. Because once Brian and I both saw this trailer, we were both like, yes.
Well, honestly, though, if you even told me this movie was coming out, I would have been like, yeah, it'd make my list, but it'd be like, mid to low on the list behind like all the usual franchise, things like that.
It would have been one of those that was like in our like 20s for like, this sounds interesting, but I haven't seen it.
Right, I like Jason Reitman. I only know of really a couple of the names in it. I mean, I've recognized them, but I only like really follow a couple of the names. And so I'm like, okay, whatever. But then we saw the trailer. The trailer looked really good. So, yeah. and more importantly, you and I are on the same page with Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. Yes, and it definitely had that same vibe. Like, this is perfect. We want to see this movie.
Honestly, it felt like, at least the trailer did. Like, it honestly felt more almost like Aaron Sorkin, like Studio 60.
It felt very much like Aaron Sorkin.
And I was just like, oh no, it's Reitman. I was like, okay, but I'm in, because this trailer was, chaotic and just awesome, and it looked like the cast looked really good for playing, the actors they were trying to portray. Like, everything about this movie just had you and me just excited for it. Now I'm basically like almost 2 hours removed from seeing it. Brian, you've seen it twice now, actually.
I did get a chance to see it a second time. So yeah.
But yeah, so let's go ahead and jump to yours, because you got a little more than me on it. What were your thoughts of Saturday night? Actually, no. Before we jump into it, you are a Saturday Night Live fan, or at least were at some point?
Yeah, it's kind of thing where so I was growing up, and I was aware of Saturday Night Live in the early years. I think once it hit like the that Billy Crystal Martin short cast, that's when I was like of the age where I was actually like watching it on a regular basis. And then of course on through the years I watched it for the longest time, and it was only in the last I don't know 10 years that I kind of stopped watching it. But it's kind of the same time where it became you don't need to watch it, because the good clips you can always just catch on YouTube, because they chop it all up into individual clips and you can watch what you want and skip.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always been a fan of it. I mean, it's always been, even in the beginning when people talk about the golden years of it, it's a very hit and miss show. For every good skit, there's a horrible skit and a whole lot of in between. But the things when people look back on the old, because everybody's like, oh, it used to be so much better. No, it didn't. It's just you only remember the good ones from the past, whereas in the recent ones, you remember all the ones, the good and bad.
The best way I could explain this for people who are of fans of me, who know me with my wrestling background, everyone wants to praise the Attitude Era of WWE. Like, that was the best. I'm like, no, you guys remember like the 5 to 6 really fucking good wrestlers like Stone Cold, Rock, Triple H, Undertaker, Kane. But every like 5 or 6 of them, there was like 20 shit wrestlers that were on every week. There were some horrible fucking matches, but the good shit was so fucking good that you just pretend that shit sucks.
Well, that's just it. It's like with Saturday Night Live. When you think back to Saturday Night Live, when you're looking at the old ones, it's because you're watching like a best of compilation where you're seeing all the best skits from like the original cast, and like, oh, these are great. But like even in this movie, like the first sketch that they actually show on like towards that launches the show, it's not funny. I mean, at the time, maybe people thought it was funny. I don't know. But it just reminded me of like, okay, they weren't all winners. And actually, after I watched this movie the first time, I went onto Peacock and watched the whole first episode.
I wanted to do that, but I knew we were getting ready to shoot. So I was like, okay, I'm not gonna have time to do that. But it did make me want to go and watch the first episode and go, okay,
it was fun to do. It was fun to do now with more context and the behind the scenes and everything. Yeah. So I'm kind of like, oh, this is interesting. Now, obviously, we don't know how much of this is dramatized, because like they dropped a lot of things into it that obviously little sketches, that references to sketches that would come later in the show, like the Julia Child and even Garrett Morris singing his I'm gonna get me a shotgun song and all that kind of stuff. These are all things that like well-known things from the show, but that things didn't happen that night. So they obviously condensed some things to add some entertainment. But it's one of those things that's like fictionalized, but it's definitely essentially the real story. And I found it very interesting because it combines two things I really like, which is good, snappy dialogue, driven movies. The kind of thing you get from somebody like Aaron Sorkin or even like a Shane Black or something like that. But it also combines it with I love of all the gimmicks, I think one of my favorite is the real time gimmick, whether it be Nick Cage in Snake Eyes or Johnny Depp in Nick of Time, which is an underrated movie. Watch that movie. Or this thing. Like I love when it's like 90 minutes is 90 minutes. So it's like you're kind of, because it makes everything just feel the tension rises, and it's very, especially the score that's kind of helped it feel like it's very driving. Like it's this train that's about to go off the rails, and it just makes it, I think, that much more exciting.
Yeah, for me, I think much like me when I was a kid, I had heard of Saturday Night Live. There were little things like Coneheads and Wayne's World. I knew them as the movies. I didn't know them as the SNL sketches. Same thing with Night at the Roxbury. That was probably when I actually first started to like take them. Like, oh, this is Saturday Night Live. Okay, because I knew them as just the movies. It wasn't probably, and then when I started to actually watch TV, I think I was more like the Mad TV group of people. But then that's when you had Chris Kattan, Will Ferrell, Sherry O'Terry, Tracy Morgan, and oh my god, I'm blanking on his name. Ladies Man.
Tim Meadows.
Tim Meadows. That was me. That's when I was like, I'm watching this every week, and I pretty much stayed all the way through. Up until I think the latest new group came through, like once kind of after the last election, then Kate McKinnon left and Andy Samberg kind of bailed, and then Bill Hader left, and I was just like, I really don't like any of these new people.
Yeah, it's like I think these days, like on like Sundays after a new episode airs, a lot of times if I'm just cruising around YouTube or whatever, I'll usually check out like maybe like the opening skit and maybe like the weekend updates and stuff like that. But unless it's like a host that I'm really interested in seeing, I don't really watch much of it.
Yeah, unless I hear some really big word of mouth from, I think the latest one was like Pedro Pascal was like, dude, he killed it. And I was like, okay, let me go check and see some of the stuff that he did. And I was like, oh yeah, that was some funny stuff. But yeah, it was kind of like the same thing with me with like The Simpsons and Family Guy and American Dad, is you just got used to watching it every Saturday. And then one day you're just like sitting here going, when was the last time I actually fucking laughed at this show?
Yeah, it's those shows you realize I'm watching this show not because I like it, but just out of habit.
Yeah, and then that's where I was like, I just kind of pulled myself like, when was the last time I laughed? I can't remember. Okay, well then I'm done watching this. And it's hard. It's hard to find like because it's just accustomed to you. And so I never really watched the early years. Now granted, I've watched, like Watch Mojo and stuff like that, where it would go like, top 100 sketches and stuff, and I would see the old stuff that way. Or I actually have, I don't know if I still have them. If I did, I gave them away. It was like the best of David Spade, the best of Chris Farley, the best of Adam Sandler, and I would watch all those things.
And then they've had like all those anniversary specials, like the 20th and 25th and 30th and 40th.
When they actually wanted to give them a night off, or they would play it on like a Tuesday or a Thursday night. I'm like, all right, I'll check that, because I loved Weekend Update with Colin Jost and Michael Shea. I loved those two. Same thing when it was Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. Like Weekend Update was always like my favorite part of the actual show. But I never got to watch the originals. I never watched, Chevy and Aykroyd and all that. And not like I would see the occasional skits, like Aykroyd when he was doing like, what was it, the toy thing where he's like, this is a dangerous toy.
Bag of glass. Yeah,
exactly. So I was super intrigued by this. And like I said, much like you, I like the snappy, boom, 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 fast pacedness of it, because it reminds me of Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, which we both loved. But this cast are all people that I actually really enjoy. Gabriel LaBelle, we got introduced to him a couple years back on The Fabelmans. I was really high on him then. Rachel Sonnet, I think she has loads of potential. Haven't necessarily really loved the movies that she's been in, but I like her as a comedian. Corey Michael Smith, I know him from Gotham. He was a phenomenal Penguin on that show. So that's where I knew him from. Of course, I'm a huge fan of Dylan O'Brien ever since his Teen Wolf days. So anything he pops up on, I'm interested in. Coba Lake just came out too, so I'm probably going to watch that at some point. Lamar Morris, I'm a huge New Girl fan. So naturally, I got that connection with him. I'm super happy he just won an Emmy for Fargo. But yeah, like I really like this cast. Even Oh God, I've not seen his name in the beginning part here, which makes no sense because he's the main character. The guy from Licorice Pizza, who plays Dick.
Oh, it's Philip Seymour Hoffman's son. What's his name?
Yeah, he's not on the main part of this IMDb thing. Cooper Hoffman, who plays Dick Ebersol. Like I said, I didn't like Licorice Pizza, but I thought he was good in it. So this cast really interjected me. Plus, I knowing who they're playing, because these are actors that maybe I didn't watch them on Saturday Night Live, but I know them from movies and stuff like that. So I was definitely intrigued by this and the snappy energy that it was bringing through. But so let's go back to you. What were your overall thoughts of Saturday Night?
This didn't disappoint me at all. This is a movie like from the very opening, where first of all they were showing like their over the opening credits, kind of like their audition tapes, with like I thought that was a perfect way to introduce everybody, because you're like, that some of them you might know by their voice or their look, like the John Belushi and the Dan Aykroyd, things like that. But some of the other ones, you're like, I'm not sure who that's supposed to be, but I thought it was the perfect way to kind of introduce them and kind of because they didn't necessarily go for perfect lookalikes. A lot of them, they kind of had the general look of them, but we'll go into it later. But I got the essence of the characters down perfect, and the voices and stuff I thought was very well done. But from the very beginning, I thought I was impressed with the style of it. And then once it started going, like I said, that real time thing, the snappy dialogue, the just the pacing of the whole thing, and kind of you get to experience the chaos along with them. I thought it was perfect. I had to smile on my face through the whole movie. And it's one of those things where it's like it's getting towards the end of the movie, and you can tell because obviously they're counting down real time to the show starts. Mm-hmm. So it's basically counting down to the end of the movie. And this is one of the few times where I wasn't doing watch checks. Well, I was doing watch checks, not to see how much time, how much longer this movie was so I could be out of here. It was more like, oh, I don't want it to end yet. I was just enjoying being in this. Like, I almost kind of wanted them. Can we just stay with them through the episode and watch them, film it?
Yeah.
But I just thought it was so well done. I think it's great directed. I think obviously the dialogue, like we talked about, was great. And the acting, I think the cast is what impressed me the most, top to bottom. Every single person nailed their character. Some of that was surprising. Dylan O'Brien, I really like him in movies that he's in. I would never have thought of him for Dan Aykroyd. And so when I heard that, I'm like, that's kind of a weird choice. But then as soon as he starts talking, you're like, he is perfect in this role. I thought he was one of the guys that impressed me the most. Matt Wood, who played John Belushi, I don't know from anything. I don't know if he's done much of anything. But I thought he made a great John Belushi. Gabriel LaBelle, the star of it, who, he was, I think, one of the ones who more than anybody else wasn't doing an impression because it would sound more like Dr. Evil if he was.
Yes, because Lorne Michaels sounds like Dr. Evil.
Well, that's where my got his Dr. Evil
yeah.
from. But he wasn't doing an impression of him, but you could definitely believe him as a character. And I thought he did a great job, which surprised me because, we know him as the kid from the Fabelmans. And then I saw him in a movie called Snack Shack, which is actually pretty fun. Just kind of throwaway, small indie teen comedy kind of thing. But I was like, well, he's taking this role as Lorne Michaels. He's the star of this thing. He's supposed to be an adult. I mean, yes, still in his 20s, but I'm like, I'm not sure if this will work. Worked fine. Didn't doubt him for a second. I'm not going to go through the whole cast person by person, but I just think that they all just nailed it perfectly. I think that they managed to distribute kind of the screen time properly. Everybody kind of got their due. They got their moment. They got their big scene. If you have a small role, like even the guy who played Billy Crystal, I thought he did a great Billy Crystal.
That guy was fucking amazing in this. Every time he was on screen, I was glued to this dude. I want to pull up his name because I wanted to acknowledge him if you hadn't. Nicholas Podney. Never heard of this guy. But oh my God, as soon as he started talking, I'm like, is that Billy? Oh my God, that's Billy Crystal. This dude is knocking this fucking thing out of the park. He's got such a small part. But I was like, I don't remember Billy Crystal being on SNL. And then I was like, okay, well, yeah, now it explains why. But this
apparently he was supposed to be, and then he got cut from it. But obviously they brought him back for a
writer after that. But yeah.
Yeah. But
this dude was amazing as Billy Crystal, everyone.
He really was. He did a perfect job. And I was afraid when I saw how many people were going to be in there, when they were having character, like you said, I didn't know Billy Crystal was there for that first night. I was like, oh, there's going to be shoehorning in people just to do like little impressions, things like that. But it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like they were just characters in the movie. None of them felt like somebody just doing an impression. So I think they all pulled it off perfectly. By the time the movie ended, and they kind of build up to that, live from New York and Saturday night. I kind of felt that well of just like joy. I was just like crossing the finish line. And it was just, I loved this movie. I really love this movie.
The only thing I would have added is during the credits that they would have actually like showed the live telecast, like snippet, like little like side. Here's the credits. This side you have Chevy doing Weekend Update. You have them doing the Bumblebee sketch. You have them doing that. Like I would have played that shit through the credits. I fucking loved this movie. I was so happy with everything. There's not a single thing that I would change about this except for like that, but that's just because I wanted more. When this movie ended, I was like, I've never wanted this to be a TV series more because I want to stay with this cast. I want to stay with these actors as this cast. I would have loved if this was like an HBO Max original and the whole season was them doing the first season of SNL and us ride that journey. Gabriel LaBelle was great as Lauren Michaels. Rachel Sonnet, she was captivating in everything she was.
I don't generally like her, but I think like you, it's not her that I don't like. It's the parts that she plays in Bodies, in Bottoms, in some other movie. Was it Shiva Baby? Is another one I've seen of hers, where it's like they're fine movies. They just aren't the kind of movies that I like.
Yeah.
I don't, and she usually plays unlikable characters too.
That's her problem. Is she plays unlikable characters, but
so I thought she was in this.
a good job.
I'm gonna have to deal with her, but fine. One bad cast member I can overlook. I liked her in this one. She was
loved her. I loved her in this. She just had that chemistry with everyone she had a scene with. Corey Michael Smith was fucking perfection as Chevy Chase. Like Chevy Chase now, no one really likes him anymore. He's kind of a douche. But he was also a douche back then, but he was fucking funny, so you kind of dealt with it. Kind of like Belushi. Belushi was an asshole, but he was funny. Corey Michael Smith, phenomenal as Penguin, but his Chevy was amazing. Dylan O'Brien as Dan Aykroyd. I wanted more for him in the movie, but I know. He can't. It's such a big ensemble cast. You're only going to get.
You know what I want. You know what I want. I can't really make a sequel to this movie, but you know what I want. I want to see Dylan O'Brien and Matt Wood in a movie about the making of Blues Brothers, just because I want to see more of those two.
I would don't totally, but Matt Wood did such a great job as John Belushi. Lamorne Morris as Garrett Morris, I thought was good.
He was the one person I thought he kind of had like a one note thing. I mean, he did it perfectly, but it kind of felt like I wish he had more to do. But at the same time, that's kind of the point. The character kind of felt the same way, so it kind of worked.
I almost kind of was watching. I was like, you know what? He could have also been Eddie Murphy. I think he could have pulled Eddie Murphy off too. But obviously, he wasn't in the.
That was years later, yeah.
Exactly. But I was watching. I was like, he could have done that. Nicholas Braun. Every time he popped up as Jim Henson, fucking loved it.
It's a weird choice. It's such a weird choice to have one person playing more than one character. Now, if you do, Monty Python or one of these comedy troupes or something where everybody's playing multiple characters, fine. But in a movie where you have this giant ensemble cast, to have one person playing two characters, I thought this is a weird choice. Why did they do this? It's not like they're short on cast members. But it worked because they were such completely different characters that it worked. I thought he did a great job. And it was kind of weird. It was almost like he was the comic relief in a movie that's already, a complete comedy, but it still worked somehow.
And Matthew Rhys as George Carlin. Because I was just like, is that the guy from the Americans? I'm like, that totally is. He was great as Carlin. I loved this whole crew. I love this whole ensemble. I love the writing. I love the fast breakneck speed of it. I love just the utter chaos because the way this movie goes, there's no fucking way they're going to make it to air. But we know they do because it's real fucking life. But it didn't feel like real life because it's just so fucking crazy the way this shit was going down 90 minutes before, it went through. But I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. So many top-notch performances. When we discuss our end of the year awards, Saturday Night is going to be one of those, especially when we get to the acting categories, that is going to be something that we're probably going to have to battle on because there's so many people in this that I want to acknowledge in this.
It's like we don't want the whole category to be just one movie, but
I know. As I'm saying, we're going to have to battle over like who are we going to put in, who are we not going to put in. This was one of my favorite films of the year, hands down. Like I said, fast breakneck speed, does not overstay its welcome because of that runtime. Now, granted, they did stretch some of the time limits a little bit because it's like, it's 90 minutes. The movie goes to about an hour 49 or something like that. So there's a couple times where but it's not a point where I'm going to knock it because I didn't want to leave this. I wanted to keep going with this. I wanted to stay with this cast. Like I said, I wish this was actually a TV series. We got to stick with them for 12 hours of this crew. The names in this, they're much like Saturday Night Live with this. Most of these people are relative no names for most of Hollywood. People don't really know Gabriel LaBelle yet. Some people know Rachel Sonnet, not really. No one really knows Corey Michael Smith unless you watched Gotham. Dylan O'Brien is probably the biggest name out of this group.
As long as you're not counting J.K. Simmons, which, by the way, learned something about Milton Berle I never knew before.
Yes, and technically Willem Dafoe as well.
Willem Dafoe, I love Willem Dafoe in this.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe and J.K. were great in this. Robert Wool, I fucking love Robert Wool. He's got a part in this. It's just a top-notch cast the whole way through. Like I said,
and Ella Hunt, who played Gilda Radner, you probably aren't familiar with her. I only know her from Anna and the Apocalypse, the comedy musical horror Christmas movie.
I still have not seen that movie.
It's actually pretty fun if you like musical. I mean, the music is a little High School Musical-y, but it works for me. But I liked her in this too.
What did you end up giving it?
It's currently at a 4.5 stars. It could go to a 5. It's the kind of thing where I rarely give out 5s right off the bat. I kind of like let it simmer for a while first.
I have been super stingy on giving 5 stars this year. I have not given a single movie this year 5 stars. But I've given 2 movies a 94%, which was The Fall Guy and Dune Part 2. And now Saturday Night. I'm giving it a 94%. It is tied for my favorite film of the year. Obviously, all 3 of those movies, totally different movies. Absolutely. But I love this movie. I strongly recommend this film for anyone who is a Saturday Night Live fan or who just really wants to watch a relative, almost no-name cast of just crazy people playing actors that we grew up with, who are probably really old now to a lot of people, but back then were young upstarts that were no names, and now we're watching young people play them that are going to be big names.
And that's one thing I do want to say is that if you're somebody who doesn't know Saturday Night Live, especially doesn't know Saturday Night Live in that era, you should not feel like you won't get things, that you won't get the joke. I mean, yes, there are references to things that we know about if you know the history of Saturday Night Live or you know certain skits, but even if you have no familiarity with it or very little familiarity with some of these things, you'll still enjoy the hell out of this movie.
Yeah,
you could pretend it's just a fictional show and you would still just enjoy it.
Exactly. This is not, being a Saturday Night Live fan or knowing the history is not a requirement to see this film. You can watch this outright of its own. You could have never watched a single episode of SNL and you would be able to follow this movie. There's nothing about this that's going to make you lose something. Now, if you're watching this, I don't know who Chevy Chase or Dan Aykroyd is. You guys got some 80s comedy, 90s comedies to watch, because what the fuck? How do you not know who those two are? But obviously 2 huge recommendations for both Brian and I. This is definitely a must watch for anyone who just really likes movies, because everything about
you should all go watch Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip too.
Is it on Peacock?
It's not anywhere to watch for free at the moment, but you can buy it.
Hey, if you guys are fans of Matthew Perry, rest in peace, Chandler Bing,
and Bradley Whitford, it's great.
And Bradley Whitford, they are the leads of that.
As much as we love that show, this is better. Well,
yeah. But if we got this for a full season, it would be Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, but just more chaotic and crazy. But yes, we hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the movie Crusaders. And of course, follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. For anyone who's been watching it already, thank you. Our Decades of Horror series has been a huge hit with everybody so far. Views are a lot higher than normal. Thank you guys for watching those. We are going to be continuing on here with the 2000s and then 2010s and then the 2020s. So be on the lookout for those. 80s and 90s are out right now. Also, we're going to be coming right back here to talk about Terrifier 3, another most anticipated film of Brian and I for this Halloween season. We're going to give you our non-spoiler and then spoiler discussion, because we definitely have some thoughts about Terrifier 3. So we hope you guys check that out. Next week, though, we've got Netflix's Women of the Hour, Anna Kendrick's directorial debut. We also have got, I'm pulling them up real quick, fastly here. We've got Shadow Strays on Netflix, which is Brian's real excited for, because we both love The Night Comes for Us. So that's definitely going to be watched. We also got Goodrich with Michael Keaton and Mila Kunis. Honora, We also got Smile 2. So we got a few films coming out here.
And
So
Brothers, with, Dinklage and Brolin.
oh yes,
Brothers.
which I don't know if that'll be available in my area. So
It's on it. No, it's Amazon.
oh, it's on Amazon. Okay, cool. So I'll check that as well. If anything, most of those movies, probably none of them are going to get their own reviews. So we'll probably just, once we get through the Halloween season, we'll probably do a movie series chat about and just kind of do a review dump of all this stuff. Just because we're focused on the decades of horror right now. But stay tuned for all that. And go see Saturday Night. This is, like I said, hands down one of the best films of the year. You guys will not be disappointed. It is a laugh riot. But until next time, I'm Sean Wascrew. That is Brian Michaels. We are the Movie Crusaders. And in case we don't see you, go watch some movies. Go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.